part of the Yellow Springs team, and we welcome you. And thank you for appearing here tonight. And you are officially released from your duties at the moment.
Thank you, ma'am. You have a good one.
Welcome, Officer Kincaid. Great to have you. And thank you, Mayor Pam. All right. Good way to start off the meeting. So we're going to move into announcements. And I know we've got one on the agenda that Lisa Abel is providing. And Lisa, if you want to go ahead and unmute, how you just move. Okay. All right. I saw Lisa there for a minute.
Come here.
Oh, hey, there you are. Great. All right, Lisa, announce away.
All right. I have a couple of announcements from the Development Corp that I was asked to provide to you today. The first is on the Wellness Center, and that's still in progress. The facility due diligence is done and ready for some continued work with Antioch to get things ready. The director search process has been started, and we're currently negotiating with the college on the path to project completion. So it's no open date yet. Of course, that's what everybody wants to hear, but we don't have that yet. But there's progress being made. The second is around the Mills Lawn exploration process. And I just wanted to clarify a couple things that have come up recently. One is that by law in the state of Ohio, the Development Corp is not permitted to get any transfer of assets from schools. It's just not allowed. And we're not interested in doing that. The second is that we've agreed to hold a respectful community-wide forum where we can all deeply understand each other's concerns for the Mills Lawn property and begin to generate creative ideas for future use after passage of the levy. And that process we anticipate will kick off in the next couple of weeks, and it's a community-wide engagement process. We don't really, after talking about it a little bit more today, we don't, with the a group that's working with the project manager on this, we don't necessarily anticipate that this work will be done by November. So just a update on that as well.
All right. Well, Lisa Abel, thank you very much. Appreciate those updates. And yeah, I think that's some anticipated information that people are going to be excited to hear more about. So thanks a lot. All right. Lisa Krieger, I know you had an announcement. Oh, are you? Let's see. Can you unmute?
Trouble unmuting. Yeah, there I am. I don't think I'm a host, so that. So one of the most wonderful things in my world as a council member for the Village of Yellow Springs is working with the Arts and Culture Commission. And the Village of Yellow Springs Arts and Culture Commission is happy to say that we are going to present the Village Inspiration and Design Award, or VIDA, to the local business Rose and Cell, owned by Susan Burgess and Michael Bell. Rose and Cell opened in May 2018 and offers an eclectic, beautiful variety of vintage and modern products. In 2020, Rose and Cell unveiled an indoor-outdoor community space for safe gathering, events, and live music in the back of the shop, featuring murals painted by artist Anna Burke, inspired by the works of California-based artist Jason Yates, described as psychedelic expressionist. And those of you who stopped in Rose and Cell during Porch Fest might have seen that these murals actually come to animated life, thanks to some new technology. A celebration of the VIDA is planned sometime in October, and the dates will be noticed in the Yellow Springs News and social media. And we hope that the murals will come to life when we do that. So thanks to the entire Rose and Sal team on behalf of the Village of Yellow Springs for your many contributions to arts and culture in Yellow Springs. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Do we have any other announcements?
Brian, I have an announcement.
I just want to thank.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura. Yeah.
I want to thank the Porch Fest committee. They are people who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes for really 2 years now to bring you the Porch Fest that just happened. And I think it was a big success. So I just want to give a shout out to Brittany Baum, Rachel Price, Paul Herzog, Leah Mendenhall, Lou and Sharon Bonadies, Alex Scott, and hoping I'm not forgetting somebody. And I have worked with them as well the entire time. So I just think it is a terrific committee. Oh, Scott Fife. So and the Yellow Springs Community Foundation provided the insurance and fiscal sponsor support for that as well. So just thanks to everybody.
All right. Thank you, Laura. It was an amazing day, an amazing event. I want to echo those thanks. I also appreciated that the village team worked with the organizers to help with masks and some other things. I know downtown businesses seem to be having a great day, and I heard lots of positives. So great work. And to all the supporters that offered porches. Okay, Josue, it sounded like you had something?
Yes, thank you, Brian. Greene County is offering a tire amnesty collection dates. This is if you have tires and you just are not using it to do any of those kid swings off trees and you're just accumulating them, you could get rid of them. So there's a tire amnesty program happening with the Greene County, funded by a Ohio EPA grant. So the Greene County Sanitary Engineer Department will collect tires that can be on the rim or off the rim, and you can just call them up, register with them, tell them you got the number of tires, and you can drop them off at 2 location dates on September 30th and or October 28th. There's a small fee per tire, and that's $1 per tire for car or light truck. Or if you got those big semi tires, those are $2 a tire, and agriculture tires, which are significantly larger, are $5 a tire. So for more information, please call Greene County Soil and Water Conservation District, and that is 937-416-6906. And Philip will be putting out marketing material on this.
Okay. Anything else, Josue?
That's it.
All right. Mary Ann, Kevin, any announcements? Nope. Okay. Just a few more things, a couple other thank yous. I wanted to definitely thank our folks for getting out more mask signage. I know that was also greatly appreciated, and it was great that it also came in prior to Porch Fest. And I wanted to thank Johnny and his crew for continuing to enhance the dog park. I saw the really cool bench that was placed and a lot of other things. So what a great community collaboration. Wanted to make sure it was on everybody's radar that the plan is to do the Wheeling Gaunt statue and park unveiling. That's October 2nd. So I wanted to mention it since we won't have another meeting before then. Festivities are supposed to start at 1:30. There's going to be a great program, and there's been a lot of really awesome work that's been done. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that we hosted the Greene County Women in Business group last Thursday, and we had masks on, and it was very safe and well spaced out. But it was really great to interact with them about the Greene County Master Trails Plan and the Rebuilding America's Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity grant and a variety of other things. They're really interested in what's going on and can support that activity. So that's all I've got. Let's go ahead and move to the consent agenda. And we have the minutes from our last meeting on the 7th. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move.
And a second?
Second.
All right, Judy, could
Second.
you call? Thank you. Can you call the roll, please, Judy?
Yes, Krieger,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is a review of the agenda. Anything that we need to add, remove, or revise on the agenda?
Yes, please. This is Krieger. I'd like to add under old business a conversation primarily about the memo submitted by Curlis regarding green space and the YSDC. I think that's old business.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Anything else?
Yes, I'd like to have a very brief discussion to get some thoughts about how we might formally celebrate or acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day, which comes, I think it's the 11th, right between our two council meetings, which would be, I guess that would be new business.
Yep. Okay. Anything else?
The Culture Commission has been doing some work with that, so I can have some comments there.
Yes, I saw that. Thanks, Lisa.
Great. Okay. So if nothing else, Marianne, would you like to run us through the petitions and communications?
Sure. We had the mayor's proclamation for the 20th anniversary of the Green Cats. We had a petition signed by a lot of people, citizens to preserve Mills Lawn green space, and a letter to council and the school board in regard to that. We had a letter from the Downtown Business Association requesting that the village look at various options to increase parking for downtown. There was a letter from Patty Dallas suggesting that we hire a COVID point person to organize and communicate about COVID and how we're handling that in the village. Then Lisa Krieger and Brian Hausch had a commitment addressed to the community about equity in policing and suggesting the development of a justice system advisory committee. And Laura Curlis had the letter that Lisa referenced, I guess, basically in support of the council and the schools and the green space issue. So I think that's it.
Okay.
I have a question about that equity letter from Brian and Lisa. Did you notice the date on it? I just want to know if that's a mistake.
No, that's right. That's the letter I referenced at the last meeting, and I just put it in.
It's over a year old.
Yeah, it was from June of 2020.
2020. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, also I really just want to reiterate that letter from the Downtown Business Association had a lot of great details, a lot of thoughts to follow up on, and certainly things that we've continued to have on our radar and work on. All right, we're going to move into legislation. And first up, we have Resolution 2021-18. And Judy, we can do that by title only.
Yeah, this is Ordinance 2021-18, prohibiting housing discrimination based on source of income in the Village of Yellow Springs.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. So this is a second reading. So I'm going to open the public hearing right from the outset and ask Deborah, maybe since you're on the line, just a real brief overview. We've been talking about this, I think, for a while now, but it'd be great to just make sure everybody's up to date on what we're doing with this legislation. And make sure you are, all right, you should be able to unmute.
Great, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm glad that you all understand the technology. I was worried there was something I was doing wrong. So this is the ordinance that would prohibit discriminating based on the source of income of a renter. So it prohibits a landlord from knowingly discriminating based on the source of income. Source of income could include something like the tenant having a Section 8 housing choice voucher, having income through Social Security, or having a rental assistance as a form of way to pay their rent.
All right. Thanks, Deborah. So do we have questions or comments from
I have a question.
Yeah.
Brian, this is Kevin Stokes. Thank you, Deborah, for being here. So, but I was asked a question of someone recently, and the question effectively is, does this law, once this law goes into effect, does it force landlords to do something differently than what they're currently doing? Oh.
Sorry, I had already muted myself. Sorry about that, Kevin. So what this law says is that if a landlord would refuse to rent to a tenant because they have a voucher, that would be discrimination. So it basically would create a new protected class source of income. So if the landlord's refusing to rent to someone because of their voucher status or because they have, Social Security as their income, that would be discrimination, or could be considered discrimination, I should say.
Right. Thank you. But it doesn't force the landlord to go to Greene County and register for Section 8, for example.
That's correct. That's correct, Kevin. So they don't have to do anything affirmatively. It just provides protections for tenants from being discriminated against based on their source of income.
Great. Thank you. That if that person that I spoke to is listening, that would certainly answer their question. I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you once again, Deborah, Ellis, and anyone else that's on from Able Law for doing the original draft of this legislation, and I certainly look forward to moving forward with it. Thank you.
All right.
This is Lisa. I have a follow-up question. So I also heard from some community members along those lines and did a little bit of research about what are the steps that it takes to become a Section 8 landlord. And in all cases, it did describe that the person would have to go through an application process, then have to have an inspection of their property. And so what it sounds like from your response to Stokes is that if we pass this, that somehow doesn't happen. That doesn't make sense to me. So it seems to me that any landlord would have to contact and obtain the paperwork and then fill out that application and go through that inspection before they began accepting vouchers. So are you saying that if we pass this legislation, that won't be necessary for landlords? Like I have a rental property, I can just start accepting Section 8 at will?
So what I'm saying is that a landlord doesn't have to do anything affirmative right now. If a tenant reaches out to them and that tenant, he or she has a voucher and wants to utilize that voucher at that property, the landlord can't refuse to rent to that tenant because he or she has a voucher. That would be a source of income discrimination. So they can other legitimate reasons to refuse to rent to a tenant, but it can't be based on a protected class. And in this case, the ordinance would create a source of income as a protected class. If the landlord wanted to rent, if the landlord wants to go on the program through Greene Metropolitan Housing Authority, they would have to contact Greene Metropolitan Housing Authority to start that process. But typically, how it works in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program is a participant has a packet that they take to a landlord, have a landlord complete, and then they return it to the housing authority, who then begins the process of inspecting, determining if the rent is reasonable, and so forth.
Okay. Thank you. Mary Ann, did you have a question?
Yes. I was thinking about this issue because I think that it's possible that landlords might be hesitant to rent to Section 8 because of the bureaucracy. and because of the inspection and because they might have to do things to their property. So I was having a conversation with Susan Stiles, who's the former director, and we were talking about the possibility of if there were some mechanism, not necessarily run by the village government, but supported by the village government at any rate, that would help landlords if they were having issues, if they needed help in getting their property up to, like some kind of loan or forgivable loan to get their property up to the standards so that they could rent. And apparently this is something that has been done in Xenia, for example. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think that could be a hesitancy that people have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We talked at the last meeting about, educating and so forth about what the process really is. And, I'm not convinced it's that onerous, but I like this idea of incentivizing and thinking about that piece too. We should definitely look at what Xenia has done and see if we can get some ideas about that. Laura, did you have something?
I did. I'm not sure I'm clear. Like Lisa, it seems to me that if somebody presents a voucher, let's say to Lisa, she has a rental house, and she's not currently signed up with the county to do, or the feds, whoever she has to sign up with, to do Section 8, that once somebody presents a voucher, then she has to, in order to comply with the law.
So the ordinance
seems like the landlord does have to do something affirmative once they've been presented with a voucher. Is that how this is going to work?
So the question previously, I believe, was does the landlord have to go ahead and sign up to be a participant in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program? And my answer was no, the landlord does not have to do that. If a tenant, to your question, Laura, if I understood you correctly, and I had a little bit trouble hearing you, so I'm leading in like we're in person and we're not. But if a tenant went to a landlord and said, I have a Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher and I want to rent from you, the tenant would have a packet that the landlord would have to complete. And then the tenant would turn that packet into the housing authority, who would then follow up with the landlord about the next steps, which would include an inspection.
Okay, so they would have to. I mean, so Lisa would then become I'm sorry to use you, Lisa, but she'd then become a Section 8 landlord.
Well, if that tenant resided at the property pursuant to a housing choice voucher, the landlord would be participating in the program. That's correct. I see that Judy muted and shook her head. I don't. Go ahead.
Well, there's a presumption that if you're presented with a voucher and you turn it in, then you must comply with all Section 8 criteria. But what happens is that someone is sent out to assess the property and make an evaluation and decide whether it meets those Section 8 standards. There's no requirement that you add a bedroom because the tenant has 3 children and you only got 1 bedroom. I mean, there are no requirements in that regard. It's just a matter of seeing whether through the bureaucracy you do in fact qualify or you do not in fact qualify. And there is, if you looked at that little memo I threw in, a $300 incentive program right now through Greene County. If you do want to become a first-time landlord, that I assume it goes to offset some of those things, but it does not mean that you are now mandated to become a Section 8 landlord if someone brings you that packet. It just means that you start that process and determine whether or not your rental is eligible.
But if it is, then you have to rent to them or you violate our law.
I would think not if you had 3 renters at the same time all asking to rent the property and someone else had come to you first. I mean, I think the same standard applies as with any rental. What you can't do is say, no, because you're Section 8, I will not rent to you. Am I correct in that, Deborah?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue that we're trying to prevent is no Section 8, which we see a lot. Where landlords basically say, we are not going to rent to you because you have a voucher. And the ordinance includes voucher holders as a source of income, but it also includes, Social Security as a source of income. So there's a long list of types of income. It's to try to prevent tenants from being deprived rental housing because of their source of income if they're otherwise eligible to rent the property. Landlords can still have, tenant screening criteria. They just can't knowingly discriminate against a tenant based on their source of income.
So, Deb, let me try, because I think I understand the question. So I feel like the question is, if I come to a landlord with my Section 8 voucher, are they allowed to say, I don't take Section 8, so I'm not going to fill out that paperwork?
And I think the answer is that a landlord can't refuse to rent to you because you have a voucher.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Let me ask it one more way. I'm sorry. This is Lisa again. So let's say I have a property that's opening up for rental and I have 3 or 4 different applicants and one of them is Section 8. Do I have to pursue Section 8 approval, or am I able to say, wow, in another situation, I might take Section 8, but I already have other applicants that have come in first. So at this point, I'm just saying no because you weren't the first applicant.
Lisa, I think if you have a process of screening applications and yours is a first come, first serve process, I think that's completely appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, I see some hands from attendees, from citizens. So the first one I saw was John Fee. So John Fee, you can unmute, and if you had a question or comment.
I think my question was answered. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I think it was, this law doesn't have anything to do with ex-felons, prisoners just getting out of jail. So I'm guessing I would like to just ask council if in the near future they could come up with something for felons, because a lot of times felons remain homeless when they get out because no one's going to rent to felons who have Social Security or vouchers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that comment. I think that's definitely something that we should explore. All right, I see a hand from Dino.
Okay, simple question. I'm still not getting clarity on this. I'm a landlord. I take rent from anybody. I've always have. I'm not Section 8. I'm not qualified for that. I've never done the paperwork. Now, what you're telling me is I'm a landlord, and now a Section 8 comes to me. I now have to take that no matter what. So it does apply to everybody. What you're telling me is that it does apply to every landlord. A landlord cannot pick and choose. You're telling me I am open, I am fair game for anybody to come with me, to come at me. And if it's a Section 8, I have to accept that. That's what I'm hearing, and I want clarity on that, please.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead, Deborah. Yep.
So the ordinance reads that you can't discriminate against a tenant based on their source of income, which includes a voucher. So if you're refusing to rent to a tenant because they have a voucher, then that's problematic.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that, ultimately, the focus of the legislation is on discrimination. And so I would imagine if a landlord said, I don't take Section 8, that could look problematic. So, but I think it's also been clear that there are a variety of processes that landlords have that won't change. All right, Matthew.
Matthew Kirk. I live at 1745 Southview Drive in Yellow Springs. And I guess one question I have is this something that we're currently seeing a lot of in Yellow Springs? Have we had a number of incidents of housing discrimination reported through our social worker, or is this just something where we're trying to kind of be out front and present a progressive front on something when we don't necessarily have a problem? Because one thing I worry about a little bit with this is, we have properties, that are a certain price point that maybe Section 8 would be applicable to. And a lot of those landlords are already used to working with Section 8, right? And so what we may be doing through something like this is encouraging people to bump their prices up. So if you bump your price up, now you've priced yourself out of having to deal with any potential lower income people. So there could be some unintended consequences. So if this is an actual problem that we're like currently facing and seeing like numerous instances of, maybe it'd be best just to kind of see, how things develop. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Matthew. So I can say things. I'm not sure why I have an echo. Okay. Whoever muted. All right. So first of all, in the packet, there was some great research done. Thank you, Judy Kittner, that highlights a lot of these issues, which we brought up at the last meeting. So we know that there are 13 Section 8 vouchers in Yellow Springs. We know that there were comments that it's very hard for people to use their Section 8 vouchers in Yellow Springs and Beaver Creek, and that Bellbrook is doing a good job with accepting Section 8. We're also not out front on this. Deborah, how many municipalities now have passed this? Do you remember?
I don't remember the exact number, but I know Columbus was one of the more recent ones. I want to say, I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I want to say there's between 5 to 10 municipalities that have passed source of income in the state of Ohio.
Okay. And some of these municipalities are I would not characterize as being similar to Yellow Springs in their progressiveness. And then I think the last thing is, this is a racial equity issue as well as a equity issue around income and everything else. Very important to the village values, but we did do some background on what this looks like. And there's plenty of anecdotal examples of folks that presented a Section 8 voucher and were told, we don't accept Section 8. So raising awareness about this in education, there's a variety of things I think are important. All right, do we have any other questions or comments before we close the public hearing? Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing, and Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes. Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
Well, I had another question, so I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
And yet, Laura, sorry, I didn't see that you had another question. I should have jumped in.
Well, it was you said the public hearing. So when you closed it, I was hoping you bring it back in council if they had more questions.
Yeah, sorry, and you're breaking out a lot, but yeah, well, sorry that we missed that.
Yeah.
Please jump in. Okay.
Yeah, I'm also having a tremendous amount of trouble hearing you, Laura. And I thought it was me, so I came off video, but it's not me. So I'm worried about your ability to be heard.
All right. How about this? If I stay off video, is that better?
Let's try it.
It's good.
Let's try it.
I'm in a canyon somewhere, so the reception's not that great.
Okay, so we're moving on to ordinance 2021-24, which we can do by title only.
All right, this is establishing a public utility for municipal broadband by enacting new Chapter 1043, Municipal Broadband of the Codified Ordinances, and approving creation of a utility fund.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
And
Second.
Okay. All right. I guess Josue, you're gonna start this off. And,
yes, Brian, thank you. And I think that the point that you just made about how difficult it is to hear each other when we have bad internet and lack of technology, it affects our day-to-day and our ability to make decisions about really important topics, such as the one that you're making a decision tonight. So I will now transition to my presentation, unless, Brian, you want to go directly into questions. We have all the experts that you need in this meeting: Ellis, Scott, Tim, Thor. The entire team is here, and we're happy to transition directly into questions on this matter, or I could do a quick recap of the presentation we've previously provided.
I think we're ready to move into questions. This has been an issue that we've talked about for 7 years. And we've spent a lot of time talking about it the last couple months. So I think we'll go into questions. I will open the public hearing for that, since this is a second reading. And are there any questions or comments from council?
Yes, I have a question. When we've been talking about this over this 7-year period, there was once when it was discussed that this could be a collaborative project with, say, a for-profit provider and the village. And now it appears that this is not going to be that. It's going to be solely owned by the village. So my question is, what was the shift that had it seem that this was the best approach?
I can speak during the time that I've been here. I've met with the big telecoms. I had meetings with Spectrum, Cincinnati Bell, a few other smaller ones. And when I brought up this issue about the need for broadband, more broadband in the village, the answer was like, great, yes, you need it more, pay us and we'll build it for you. And from the information I gathered from the team, that sort of seemed to be sort of the position of the big telecoms, is that they're happy to build us a bigger, better state-of-the-art network, but somebody's got to pay up, and they want us to pay up. So I found that position or that offer from them, that we would take taxpayer money to help them build something that ultimately they would own and they would profit from. I find that problematic, and I think that the state of Ohio and the federal government have also taken that position, where it's problematic to just give it all to the telecoms who aren't delivering great value for communities. So now they have allowed municipal governments, nonprofit organizations, and cooperatives to participate in the infrastructure building of America. So you've got CARES money, the infrastructure bill, and the state broadband money that it's making funding available for nonprofits, cooperatives, and municipal governments to build out their own networks, because the private sector isn't doing it. And Scott and Tim, is there, or Brian or Ellis, is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, I can just say, having worked with the SpringsNet group for a long period of time, historically, there was a lot of advocacy for a municipal-owned broadband enterprise that we could reap more benefits, and then you've highlighted a lot of things about current funding options. So it has been open to that and advocated for since the project was proposed. Okay, other question. Ellis, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I've got something to say.
We can handle 10 minutes.
Yeah, let's hear from Tim first.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Barhorse, Village resident, member of SpringsNet for all these, and wholeheartedly support this ordinance 2021-24, and here's why. I've been working on computers for a good part of my career, and I can consider the creation of the internet as one of the great inventions and innovation in modern history. And the internet very quickly has become an essential service for us in our society, and that's why we can virtually before each other this evening, albeit imperfectly. It's my firm belief that unfettered access to information is a human right, and that it clearly should be delegated as a function of the public sector. The public sector in this country has always been central to assuring that basic communication facilities reach everyone at a reasonable cost. I encourage you to this ordinance and Order 21-40-45. working, or we can make internet access more affordable without catering to big telecom. We need help empower villagers of Yellow Springs. And we can make this happen by establishing fiber optic broadband and internet as a public utility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Ellis? You've got to unmute, Ellis.
Yeah, it might be wise to hear from Scott next. These guys know more than I do, but I do have something I'd like to say after that.
All right, fine. We just need to,
Sorry.
we got a long meeting tonight. So go ahead, Scott.
All right, thank you. I'm unmuted. My name's Scott Fife. I live at 340 Stewart Drive in Yellow Springs. I've been working with Tim, Thor, Ellis, Jordan, and a number of other folks toward this goal since 2015. And it's been a long process, but I'm sticking with it because I believe this is one of the easiest policy decisions the village has ever faced, although it is complex. It is my understanding, though I am happy to have any of you who are more knowledgeable than I am about such technical things to clarify it. But I think it's important for others to understand, and I hope this goes to the point that Marianne was raising in her question. It is my understanding that this ordinance does not do a number of things, which include, it does not dictate any kind of specifications regarding any network that may result from this ordinance, nor does it proscribe or definitely dictate what kind of a business arrangement might result from that. So I don't believe that this would preclude any kind of other partnership arrangement, although I am personally opposed to that, but that's another question. It does not, in my opinion, commit the village to engage in a trade war with Spectrum or AT&T or any other telecom provider, nor does it, again, in my understanding, obligate us to spend millions or even thousands or even tens of dollars on a project until we have all of our questions answered. Rather, I believe this ordinance, among other things, is really enabling legislation, which permits us to apply for grants from states and federal governments. And we all know there's a considerable amount of money available in the grant stream right now for these kinds of things. It allows us to issue RFPs and take other planning steps that are necessary to make an intelligent decision about doing this. It lets us, and this is the part I feel most confident about, it lets us have an enterprise fund that could receive and hold and spend money, without which we can't really go any further than we have been in the last 6 years. And this is the most important point. It would allow us to conduct a pilot program that would test the deployment, provisioning, management, billing, and a whole host of other factors about which we have a lot of questions, and not necessarily firm answers in terms of what's the best way to do this if we want to be smart about it. In short, and again, I'm happy to be corrected on this point, I think this is a very low risk ordinance. We're not making decisions about what gets built or how it gets built, but it just allows us to take the next step toward getting this done. And I urge you to approve it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Scott. All right, Ellis.
Thanks. So just to add on to what has already been said, obviously the internet's very important, and a number of people don't have access to it. And one of the things that we think we could accomplish with this sort of public utility is we could try to build equity into the model as we create it. Back in 2018, Scott and I and some others met with OMIC, 365, and the Human Relations Council in order to ask them, number one, did they think this would be a good way or an important thing towards achieving equity in the village? And they thought so. And then we asked them, so what would we have to do we need to build into it in order to, get that to happen. And there were two things that came to the top every time. One is we need to make sure that there is a price point so that everybody can participate. And so at least the proposal we've been looking at, thinking about, talking about, advocating for includes a lower rate for people that need that kind of assistance. So if the rate for everybody was $40 a month or $50 a month, the lower income rate might be half that amount. And then the other thing that people identified for us was the importance of having a squad of people available to help folks figure out how to maximize their benefit from this. Number one, so they can realize that it can really do things for them. And number two, that so everybody can get access, so it's not just, the Thors and the Scotts of the world that can do this kind of thing, but everybody can get the kind of assistance. And that's what this little village of ours is set up to do that really well. We've got a lot of people in town that know that stuff, who we think can be, will make their skills available. We can maybe set up a cost structure so they can get paid by the people who can pay them, but they provide their services for those who can't. And so now all of a sudden, you have this public utility, a powerful and important public utility, and everybody gets to ride. That would be really something.
All right. Thanks, Ellis. Jordan.
Hey, thank you. I'll be brief because I know you guys have a big meeting. Just to echo what Ellis was just speaking about as far as kind of like equitable benefits. The whole, and I realize that some of you may know this, but the whole internet is structured on this concept of fair play, so to speak, and the data that moves around the globe does so in a jagged chart, a flow, because data moves, some data other moves. Everybody kind of gets to do it. When you have a higher speed solution, like we're talking about with fiber on the local last mile, it means that the data can flow from everybody at high speeds. And if this was left to just a normal incumbent player, you are going to see a problem with the net neutrality issue, where you're going to have some people being able to speed and go really quick with their data, and other people being left moving very little data. And as far as we've all seen in the pandemic, being able to be part of the community, being able to be part of the conversation digitally, it's really becoming part of the fabric of communications. And for those that are not familiar, like the whole internet, for the most part, is moving on fiber. It's only the last mile that isn't. And it's putting that in place and having it, at the municipal level allows, Josue can't take a road and expand it 7 lanes wider automatically. But with fiber, you can literally handle the next upgrade and expand that fiber connection for the future. So it's a very strong, pliable, flexible infrastructure, and it keeps the money, locally. I won't say any more. I think there's a lot of momentum already on this issue, but my own self right now, I just set up an office right where Mavecca is, because they have fiber and I need fiber connectivity. So as far as economic development, I have consultants that I want to work with in the town, and it's better for me if they have a fast connection at home and they can flow in and out of the office and work freely at home or in the office. That's really critical for me as a business owner.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate those comments. Do we have any other questions or comments before we close the public hearing? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll just double check. Anything else from council before we take a vote?
I have a question.
Yep.
We're primarily at this moment doing this because we have to create a municipal broadband utility to apply for that $4.1 million grant, which it seems to me makes a huge amount of sense because of how the numbers flow in the pro forma if we get that grant. So is that the step we're on now? I guess that's question one. And then secondly, if we don't get the grant, that kind of then what?
Josue?
To your first step, Laura, we received 300,000 to deliver fiber to up to 300 homes. So we need this legislation in order for us to be an internet service provider to those up to 300 homes and businesses. Also, by establishing this legislation, it allows us to consider ourselves an internet service provider, which is an eligibility requirement for a lot of the grant opportunities we're seeking. So this would open the door for us to be eligible for grant opportunities that are becoming available, that have become available at the state and federal level. What happens if we don't get this, if we don't get the money from one of the multiple grants that we're applying? The team here has worked on a pro forma that consider making this financially sustainable by borrowing money and being able to cover the debt obligation and the operating expense through subscription fees. So folks pay for their monthly internet fee. So there's a model, there's a business model where this is sustainable, it's self-sustaining model that the entire expense is covered by the participation of up to 65% of our residents. And it'll be successful. The model, the pro forma model shows that it can be successful if we borrow the entire amount of money to build out the network. Now we've gone a step ahead. We've already secured $300,000 that would allow us to connect up to 17% of our residents to this fiber network. So if we were to finance the entire amount, we're looking at financing the entire amount minus the 300,000. So we're already, we've made some progress towards making this financially self-sustainable enterprise.
Okay, thanks, Josue. All right, anything else before we call a vote? All right, then Judy, if you could do that, please.
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we've got second reading of ordinance 2021-26. We can do that by title only.
All right, this is creating a new fund for the purpose of receiving and expending American Rescue Plan dollars.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right. So this is a second reading. Matt or Josue, do you want to just quickly tell us the purpose of this ordinance, which is pretty specific?
Sure, I can take it. Yeah, this is for the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We recently applied for our first installment of the funding. It was deposited. We've received $196,000 and have been awarded a total of $392,000 over 2 years. Our second tranche of this funds will be deposited in July of 2022. And this ordinance is just to establish the fund and so that we can deposit the money into those funds.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. All right, so it's a second reading. I'm going to open the public hearing. Any questions or comments about this? Again, we're creating a fund. We're not talking about how to spend those dollars right now. So any questions or comments? Okay, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. And Judy, let's call the roll, please.
All right, Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
McQueen. McQueen.
Yes.
Thank you. Curlis.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, ordinance 2021-27, our first and only reading because it's an emergency. And Judy, we can do that by title only.
Okay, this is a 2021 third quarter supplemental appropriations and declaring an emergency in the village of Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All right, Matt, I'm assuming this is you again?
Yeah. Yes, Brian, thank you. Yes, this is our third quarter supplemental. Within this appropriation, you'll see a few different items on the list here. The first item on under general fund is for $13,000 related to property taxes that we had not anticipated to be as high as they came in this year. I believe this is related to a CAUV designation. The second item is a 2018 obligation from the state of Ohio regarding ADA curb ramps. This is for $13,600. A third item is the $12,000 for a pool pump. And this is related to our needs for the summer and additional chemical needs. And the enterprise funds, we actually have a sewer relining project that we're looking to do for $60,000, a $200,000 tantalus system related to the electric fund, and a $10,000 supplemental appropriation for the sewer system. This is related to an OWDA infrastructure loan, and will be helped to use for payment of the water plant. And finally, we just have a $32,000 obligation related to solid waste collections, or our solid waste enterprise fund. And this is related to expenses that were higher than anticipated for this year's solid waste collections.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Since it's an emergency, I'm going to open the public hearing. And are there any questions or comments for Matt? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Pausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Resolution 2021-43. And Judy, let's do that by title only.
All right, this is approving a contract with Annexer Tantalus for provision of electric meter and software.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right, Osway or Johnny?
Thank you, Brian. I see, oh, Johnny is here. Yep, there he is. All right, this is both of us. Johnny included a memo on this, so Johnny, I'll let you take it away.
Hey, okay, so this is for the Tantalus system. The meters that we have installed at the current time on the electric meters, we do that by a drive-by system and by walking and punching in the numbers for the water meters. They both become non-supported by ITRON as of December 31st of 2021. So if they do not, if they fail after that, we have to go back to reading them by hand, which we're going backwards. This will allow us to put in 400 meters to create the backbone so that the utility office can collect all the reads in the office and eliminate the drive-by system. It also creates a backbone because any water meters that we put in that can be accepted by the same technology, the backbone is already there to be able to do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Do we have any questions or comments for Johnny?
Yeah, Johnny, Kevin Stokes here. So yeah, you appreciate the memo and the supporting documentation, but you said this is primarily for electric meters, and there seems to be, like you mentioned, the number 400. So there's, you've identified a certain number of electric meters that need to be replaced. What is the plan? You seem hopeful to be able to do this also for the water meters, but is there a plan to replace water meters en masse?
Kevin, that's a great question. We are planning on doing the water meters, and that will come later this year when I bring it to council to talk about that. But what the 400 meters, they will be spread out amongst the village, and they'll be like a collector for all the, I'll say, the local meters around them. they'll all bounce to that 1 meter. That 1 meter will basically daisy chain back to the Bryant Center utility office. And then when the water meters, if we go to the water meters, they will also use them same 400 meters that are spread out amongst the village to also daisy chain right back to there. And then once we get further into it, like I said, this is the first of the backbone. Once we get into it, then we can do real-time customer alerts for high water reads when we start getting more backbone.
Great. I don't know if you saw it, but a light bulb just lit up above my head.
Kevin, I would
also, you really brought it home for me. Thank you, John.
Kevin, I would also add that we're looking to build out this network to tie into a future fiber network as well. So in addition to being able to send out the alerts, customers will be able to look at their usage in real time. But with the other piece to it, we're looking to use this as to modernize our grid. There are things that this technology would allow us to do much better. So a good example would be time of use, being able to calculate demand load on the individual meters so that we could, as we think about managing our supply chain and troubleshooting equipment, that load demand and distribution of power throughout our grid is important data for us to understand our network and be able to work better with our network.
Man, this is man, I'm feeling like I'm in a sci-fi novel. This is great. I love it.
Yeah, AKA present day society.
Yes, a lot of municipalities are already doing this and have been doing this for 10 plus years.
They're replacing the batteries.
Yes, yes.
So, Johnny, I did have a question. So we haven't had the current remote reads for that long. And I'm just wondering, are we able to use some of the existing infrastructure, or we just have to switch because of the software thing?
The meters that are installed, Brian, for the tankless system will have updated readers in them to allow it to be collected from other houses and sent over. The existing meters that we put in about 4.5, almost 5 years ago, we can keep them right now to be able to replace it one went bad. But in years to come, we hope to get all these meters changed out to the new meter that will be required if you want real-time data on every house in the village. The other thing that I'll mention is, Josue touched on it a little bit, it will also give the linemen better opportunity to be able to click on a website and see if there's really outages on both sides of the town or just Facebook telling you that both sides of town are out, because they'll be able to tell you by the meters what transformers are out.
Great. Well, I mean, we have talked about this for many years, and this has been like a vision to get to a place where we're more efficient and where we serve our citizens better. So it's great to see that unfolding, and that's why it's important to set goals. Any other questions or comments for Johnny? Okay, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll then.
Yes, Krieger.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Resolution 2021-44. Judy, we can do that by title only.
Okay, this is authorizing the village manager to submit a purchase order to Insight Pipe Contracting LLC, an HGAC by contractor, for $156,972.53 for the relining of select sanitary sewer lines situated in the village of Yellow Springs.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right. Josue or John?
Sounds like we got some excitement about sewer line relining. So
Yes, Tootsie Roll the Pug is excited about it.
All right, this is council's committed to making infrastructure improvements. We've been hard at working at it. Last year, we reduced over 100,000 gallons in the average flows, daily flows to our sewer plant. Relining is part of that strategy to improve the efficiency of the system. This is the second year we're going into pipe relining. It's key infrastructure work. Council's backed it last year. We're at the table again asking you for another project funding to redo another section of town. Johnny can get into the details on what section it is, but this speaks to what we've been trying to do over the last 2 years and before.
So I have to apologize. I did not make a map like I did last time, but it is about 1 mile of line again. One thing that you'll know is Matt said it was $60,000 on sewer relining on the supplemental. It's because I only put in $100,000 for capital improvement. So the 60 will come with supplemental. 100,000 was already in the capital funds budget for this year. And because of the camera work that we had done, we felt that we needed to do more, that we didn't have time to hold off on it. So we went ahead and told them to give us a price for the entire length of the part that they needed replaced.
Okay. So does that also mean some cost savings as opposed to doing
Yes.
meal? Okay. All right. Other questions or comments? All right. Judy, let's call the roll, please.
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Josue, and the entire team. All right. We've got 2021-45 title only, please.
This is authorizing the village manager to apply to Broadband Ohio for a grant to facilitate municipal broadband.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay. I think I heard a couple seconds in there, Lisa or Laura. Okay. Josue.
Thank you, Brian. This is we're pursuing a grant opportunity by Broadband Ohio. This is the same entity that provided us with a $300,000 grant. I think we have a favorable position to apply for funding and secure some additional funding. So this is a new pot of money that Broadband Ohio has secured through the state residential broadband expansion program. This program was had debate issue on the omnibus budget bill that an initial draft contemplated banding all community networks. So obviously the Senate and the House changed their mind on this and created a pool of funding available for residential broadband programming. So when apply, submit our application as we have submitted it for the federal funding opportunity. Obviously, we'll need to make changes to adapt to the requirements of Broadband Ohio, but overall, it's still the same project. Goal is to get fiber to every resident in the village.
All right, great. And we talked about this earlier. Any questions or comments for Josue?
Josue, Kevin here. Real quickly, you do allow that this is the same funding organization that we've been approved by before. Do you see that? I mean, that sounds like a very positive thing, but are there any issues that could be a problem in that we've already been funded? Is it just the expectation that that's good that we've been funded already, or might that be a detriment?
I think it could be, it's hard to tell. It could be both, right? That there's so much demand for funding for broadband expansion that we could be seen as like, well, we already gave you some seed money, take care of that. And, we'll put you on the list, sort of on the bottom of the list, if you will, because we already received funding. I hope that is not the case. I hope that we can certainly demonstrate the value of their initial investment, and we'll come back to them with a full, robust application, and it demonstrates the expertise and our ability to get things done. It's a very competitive space. Looking at the federal funding opportunity that the Biden administration made $288 million available for broadband expansion, that program received close to $3 billion in funding request. I expect that the state opportunity is going to get a lot of requests, more than what they're able to fund. So it's hard to tell how the previous grant will tie into how competitive we would be in this new opportunity.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
But that won't stop me from asking or begging for more.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll then.
Hurley.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and our last piece of legislation for the evening is 2021-46. By title only, please.
Okay, this is a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax, certifying them to the county auditor.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Matt or Josue or Judy, I don't know. Matt?
This is just accepting the rates established by the Greene County Budget Commission for their inside and outside millage. They've had expectations for next year's taxes, and we're just accepting the rates as set by them.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Matt? All right. Yeah, I don't think we have much choice here. So with that, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Yes. Curlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we're moving into citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda where we welcome any comments about items that are not on the agenda. And we will give you a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Judy will keep time on that. And if we do have any citizen concerns, I see Lindsay. Maybe this is Lindsay Burke. So you can go ahead and unmute Lindsay. All right. I think we can hear you.
Okay. So what I am bringing to the village, and thank you for your time, to the council is the Downtown Business Association's letter about parking. We understand that there have been several studies done in the past, and we're interested in implementing those studies findings as quickly as possible. You'll see a detailed list of the findings of past studies in the letter that we submitted. And the Downtown Business Association would like to urge council to move on this as quickly as possible. Since the downtown businesses are doing a lot of work to come together to overcome the challenges of the pandemic. We know that tourism is a big issue for residents and for businesses, and parking is our primary and our beginning point to be able to alleviate some of the stress that puts on villagers, and also to be able to capitalize on the tourism that will be coming up. So we would like you to move on this again as quickly as possible, and we think that the findings of past studies, of which there have been several, are sufficient. We do not need to spend more time and money doing another assessment. That's what I have to say, and thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. I do want to say, and it sounds like it was reflected in the letter, that there are activities that are continually happening. I saw the reference to the Sanitary Street location. So these continue to be, parking continues to be work that the village team is doing. However, I do think it would be good to get this on hopefully the next agenda to not only talk about an update of what's being worked on, but also some of the other things that you guys have highlighted. So thanks a lot.
We would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, take care. All right, I saw Dino next.
Hi, Dino Pallotta, Dino's Cappuccinos. Hey guys, I just got just a quick question here about the mask ordinance. we're running into more and more problems, and we're just seeing inconsistencies all around with the downtown area. I just want to get clarification. Are we doing this? Are we not doing this? Are we enforcing it? Are we not enforcing it? Because what's happening is that the businesses are choosing to enforce or not enforce, and it's really putting us in the position of policing. And I really don't want to be down that road because it's becoming more of an issue, and we're getting challenges from customers. So I just want to get clarification on your guys what we're doing, where we're going with this. Thanks. Appreciate your help.
All right. Thanks, Dino. Josue, I guess it would be you to speak to this a little bit.
Yes. And Brianne could weigh in a bit on who does the law apply to? And I think this is where we have a flaw or something that council at the time didn't consider, because we had a state mandate that put the onus of enforcement on businesses. So our ordinance requires mask wearing by the individual, however, does not put the responsibility on the individual businesses to enforce it within their establishment. So we've got a challenge there that I think council is aware and may want to consider making an adjustment or modification to ordinance to ensure that the ordinance reflects the will of council and the will of people. And I think there's a lot of desire for being able to put some responsibility of enforcement on the businesses. I think at minimum putting up signage or keeping the signage up that mask wearing is required. And the business owners don't have to be the ones to tell the individuals, put on the mask or whatnot. They can also call us. If the expectation is clear within the business that mask is required, if they have a conflict with a patron, with a customer, that they can call dispatch, call the police department, and we could follow up on the matter. The business owners can go as far as trespassing individuals that are unwilling to meet the expectations of the establishment. I think many of the complaints that have come in recently have been about two particular businesses that have decided not to enforce mask wearing within their premises, and that makes it challenging for us because we cannot require the businesses to enforce the mask on their property.
The other challenge is, since Senate Bill 22, no local health department can make a mask mandate for citywide, countywide. So what health departments are doing is issuing recommendations. You saw it last week in Dayton. City of Dayton went back to an indoor mask mandate, but our mandate was written before vaccines were available. And we have a lot of exceptions that when we first proposed this, we were on the cutting edge. Some of those exceptions are not consistent with what the CDC's latest guidance is. So if council wants to revisit what the exceptions are to mask wearing, we probably should look at what the CDC's latest guidance is, because our ordinance is not consistent with that because it's a year old.
Right, and among those exemptions that were strongly advocated for by council members are the ages, the medical exemption, and a few things that make this ordinance difficult to enforce.
Okay, well, it sounds like it may be appropriate because we said we were going to circle back to this once we made the decision to bring back the original ordinances or reinstate the emergency. I will say, as a side note, I have been to Dayton several times since the indoor mask mandate was put into place, and I'm not seeing any businesses in Dayton enforcing mask wearing on any level. And again, I just point that out because it highlights what we know about the broader picture outside of Yellow Springs and why these mandates, people don't want to follow them. I mean, no one else is enforcing it. But let's take a look at that again, and we will continue to do our best. I would say that we're, kind of in an unfortunate situation because everyone knows how challenging it is to enforce anyway. But that being said, I think that what we do know is that our police department is ready to support our local businesses. And yeah, I want to have some more conversations offline to talk to folks as well to see if there are things that we can do better, with the caveat that it's not easy. All right, Jomfi.
I want to do a quick shout out again for Rose and Sals for winning that award. I was proud that my band Africana Cosa debuted there for Porch Fest, and that is the best venue for aspiring artists in the town, in the village. So I just wanted to say that real quick. And then I think I saw you jot down, Brian, my request to have the future council after the election put on the agenda a similar law where felons can't be discriminated against for residency, for rental, for any rental property.
And I did make a note of that, Jomfi. I will say that there was, when we first started doing the some of the training around mental health, we had a group that got together, about 40 citizens, and one of the areas that was identified was lack of support services for ex-felons or criminal offenders. And so I like the idea of thinking more about that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay, and that falls in the line of last thing out of the CRB,
which is on the agenda. So we should probably.
Okay, I'll hold comment.
Okay, thanks. All right, any other citizen concerns? Okay, then we're going to move into old business because we do not have any special reports, and we're going to shuffle things around a little bit here because since we had an hour executive session, I am not willing to go past 9:30 tonight, period. So I do have some things that we may be able to discuss about goals, but I'd like to see how these other two discussions go first. So let's go ahead and start with the Citizen Review Board update. And Lisa, I've got you on that. So we'll have you start, and then I'm sure there'll be some other comments.
Sure. I want to start by saying thank you to the many people who provided input on the various permutations of the Citizen Review Board planning. I've been working on this with others since 2019, which is why the 2020 memo is in the packet, just to remind us that existed. And thanks to a lot of work from the Justice System Task Force. And I particularly appreciate the folks, the young people who have stepped forward in support of this proposal. So as everyone knows, I'm strongly in favor of a CRB. However, my impression is that we're not getting momentum of council or staff, and there are concerns about expenditure as we go into planning, combined with the resignation of the chief of police. Therefore, tonight I make the motion to table the CRB project until the beginning of 2022.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so let's go ahead and discuss. Lisa, did you have anything else you wanted to say, or? Okay.
No, I mean, I think I named the like five or six reasons why I think that it's the right thing to do. And I think this follows up on our conversation from the last meeting.
Okay. So Laura, did you have any comments that you wanted to add?
I just want to thank all the people who worked so hard on it. The subcommittee, and Sajabi, John P. Jommer, Michael Slaughter, and Louise Smith, and the 365 group who reviewed it twice, and all the comments we collected from about 20 citizens. Really thank you for all your effort, but it's also my judgment as well as Lisa's that it's not.
So Laura, I'm sorry, we're really missing most of what you're saying. Is there any way, have you tried using the dial-in number for the audio part of the meeting? All right, and now you look frozen.
Nope.
Okay. All right, well.
Let's just say I'm thanking everyone.
Okay, all right. Yeah, sorry we're missing all that, Laura, but if there is a way to use the dial-in number, that usually is successful. But I don't know, maybe you have cell coverage problems too. Okay, other comments or questions from council members, or I guess comments about this motion?
Yes.
I have a question related to the motion. We currently have Mr. James scheduled to speak with all council members on October 4th. That would be a general dialogue. So preparatory to any legislation coming out of that. So do you still want to meet with him as a council?
Well, I think that
my motion would include, not going forward with that until after the beginning of the year if this motion passes.
Okay. Mary Ann, go ahead.
Yeah. As a council member who's not been involved in this recent edition or iteration, whatever the right word is, I've felt like it really hasn't come to council much for much of a discussion. Now, that's been my sense. So I guess I'm okay with tabling it, but I'm not clear what is going to be different. What are you anticipating is going to be different at the beginning of the year? Are you thinking there's going to be more energy for it, or we're going to have a new chief, or what's, I didn't really get what would be different. I assume you want to continue moving forward with it. Is that correct?
Yes, it would. And Mary Ann, those are both good reasons. Not only that, in the preliminary goals, everybody hasn't submitted goal documents. So you did, and I really appreciate that you did that work. It didn't include a citizen review board as a goal. And that's not pointed directly at you, but just as an example, I'm not feeling the momentum overall. And I know that there's been concern about the expenditures. We're going into planning and goal setting, and my hope that as we complete goal setting and planning, the commitment either becomes more clear or it becomes more clear that it's not the goal of this council, and we can hit a reset button after the first of the year.
That's helpful. And I want to clarify, when I submitted my goals, I was not suggesting that any of the current goals not be on the goals. I was just putting forward things that I am particularly interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kevin, any comments?
No additional comments. I do intend to support the motion.
Okay, I see Jonfi's got a hand up. Jonfi, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm also in favor of tabling this. It's been kind of misrepresented either through, I don't know, not understanding the proposal, but the iteration will be the same. And last week, Lisa asked council members if they were for or against it in the current iteration with the independent, outside, unbiased investigating team. And I didn't hear an answer, so I was just hoping before the end of the night we could get an answer from council members if they were for or against it in its current iteration with the investigative team. I know Mayor Pam has been silent on it, so I'm not sure where she is on it. So that's what I wanted to ask council tonight before the night was over.
Sounds good. And I think to some degree, this vote might answer that question, but maybe folks will want to say something more. Thank you, John Fee. All right, so I think about this fairly differently. I do not support putting on the brakes. And while I do think some of the maybe lack of momentum or where there might not seem to be that full support has been more related to, I think, some politicizing and some weaponizing around this proposal, which I think to some degree we've worked through. But when I think about some of the folks that needed to be engaged and were not really treated respectfully, I have some real concerns about that part of the process. However, I like the proposal. We approved a legal review. I can't see why that legal review is a bad thing to do. It helps us understand, what aspects of this proposal are possible. Maybe they all are. Maybe there are some issues with the Ohio Revised Code that might restrict some of the things that we can do. And I guess personally, besides getting a sense that others might be upset about some of the disrespect and politicizing, I think we've got a good proposal. I think council has supported that review. And I also have heard others, in the past say, it's good to understand what the possibilities are and how we can implement this proposal when a new chief does come on board. So I think it would be really unfortunate to not continue to do this work. And I think it's continued to evolve. And so directly to John Fee's question, I support the current iteration. We've raised responsible questions about that. And the next step is to understand from a legal outside, counsel perspective, really someone that's got expertise that our village solicitor doesn't have, that we can only benefit from that. So that's my opinion about this.
Brian, can I step in? Yeah, so I would expect that, and I'm certainly wholeheartedly in support of the legal review. First of all, I thought that we would not have as much discussion that we have had until after the legal review. And I hope that, when, if it's going to be after the beginning of next year, when the issue comes up again, I hope that it would go through legal review, before it comes back to council.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think regardless of when it happens, we got to have a next step is that legal review.
Yeah. And I will make note, the proposal has been submitted to Mr. James. He has already begun work on this project in anticipation of meeting with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to amend my proposal, my motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we move forward with the legal review, and then in planning, take up the timing for next steps based on the legal review.
Okay, I'll second that. Okay, any discussion on the amended motion?
I would.
Laura, would you stay off camera? Because otherwise you're going to break up.
I'm not being allowed I'm not being allowed to unmute myself. I was on the phone. I put that in the chat and it's not working.
Okay, you sound good.
I don't know if you can hear me or not.
You sound great now.
You cannot hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you not hear us?
Yeah, you're great. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see any point in spending money on legal review any further because I'm not going to spend the time to go into every reason why this started to go askew once we submitted it to council. And the people who worked on it weren't allowed to meet with staff, weren't allowed to first talk to legal counsel to explain what's happened, what the intent is, what the goals are for the legislation, what needs to go into it. And then it could be reviewed once one knows what the elements are from the history of the work that everyone put in. And I feel that that was cut off by the majority. And I don't see any point in going forward with any of it. But frankly, we have a different council because we need different political will. And that's how I feel about it. So I'm not going to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, anything else before we take a vote? And can we just hear back the amended motion so we're all totally clear?
So I make a motion to move forward with legal review, and to clarify that, you know, council is going to be involved in that legal review, as I recall from past meetings. Mm-hmm. I'd have to go back specifically into the minutes, but council is going to be involved in that conversation, not just attorneys. And that then once we have the results of the legal review, we will take it up in planning for next steps. Okay. And, you know, my interpretation of this vote is by voting yes on this motion, you're signaling that you are in favor of continuing to pursue the journey to have a CRB.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. All right, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll then.
Yes. Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
No.
Hausch.
Yes. Yes. Okay, thanks everyone. Let's go ahead and move into the item that Lisa added to the agenda about the Mills Lawn green space and sort of related to that, the Yellow Springs Development Corporation. So Lisa, I'll let you start this one off, and then I'm sure there'll be a variety of input on this one. You're muted.
I want to begin with a general comment on an organizational health approach that's really important to me. And this comes with an acronym of GRIT, GRIT. And that's gossip, rumor, innuendo, and triangulation. And I think, unlike some, I don't really consider myself to be a politician. So, you know, perhaps I'm naive, but still I believe that I received the most votes from the community on the basis of my balanced perspectives on issues, and that grit, gossip, rumor, innuendo, and triangulation should not be the core behaviors of our council. They're very toxic behaviors. I think that they should be avoided, especially by elected officials, particularly at a time of election. And more specifically, and I'm really sad to have to do this, I have to address the memo submitted by Curlis in the packet. Let me say that first, I support green space and even deeper, a comprehensive parks plan. And I want to thank the people who've shared their perspectives, and I hear you, and I support green space. However, I assess this particular memo from Curlis as fueling a purely political ploy at this time that injects our Village of Yellow Springs Council into a challenging time that includes a continued pandemic, an upcoming school levy, elections in the township, school board, and council. And I want to say the Village of Yellow Springs does not own the Mills Lawn property at this time. It is a school. Secondly, I want to point out that the memo submitted by Curlis has mischaracterized the work of the YSDC. As Lisa Abel commented, the YSDC is a collaborative group that is capable of and interested in doing just exactly the opposite of what that memo claims. The work of the YSDC in this area has barely begun and will absolutely be full of community input. You know, Laura, this is difficult. I deeply value your expertise and contributions. And I ask you to please consider your highly political approach and join me to work together for the beauty and health of Yellow Springs through an honest process that's free of gossip, rumor, innuendo, and triangulation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some questions. Lisa, so I've done as much reading as anyone can on publicly available documents related to this study of the Mills Lawn property. And maybe you can answer this. Was the green space excluded from the RFP that the urban design group is going to be working on for a design for repurposing that property?
What are you, let me restate your question. Are you saying in that RFP, did it say that green space was not an option?
No, so the property is about 8.8 acres. Is the study just of the footprint of Mills Lawn, or is it a
Not to my understanding. It's a total study, and it's going to have community input similar to the charrette that was done at Antioch College.
So the development corporation is a development corporation, not a preservation corporation or a parks department. And when they commission a study, especially when you've got property that's currently zoned RC, and I believe it's Cleveland Urban Design Corporation or Group got the contract, one has to be, I don't know, asleep to think that ultimately an urban design is going to come out of that project.
Well, you know, it's 8:45 and I'm not asleep, but the purpose of the YSDC, one of our purposes when we were formed was to act as a convener and not to be the decision maker, but to act as a convener. And that is what we're doing here by having representation of a lot of different stakeholders and acting to convene the community in a way that the school board doesn't seem to be able to do alone. And by having us work as a convener, we believe that we will have broader input from the community, especially these folks that care deeply and signed this petition. It really is just the opening stage of considering as a community what might be possible. That's what it is. And Stokes, you're on the DC. I don't know if you want to speak up here as well, but I mean, that was the intention of the YSDC in getting involved.
Yes, sounds like, Laura, this started off as a CIC, but then there were certain ramifications, and YSDC, the development corporation, is, I think, should be more broadly applied. And we are not a developer. The YSDC is not a development company in that regard. And I think I've heard some rumblings of that from various folks. But we are not putting ourselves in a position to become a developer of Mills Lawn property. Lisa, I think, spoke correctly, saying the school board, she didn't say struggling, she said they did not want to work alone and dealing with the messaging and looking at potentials. I hope that the school levy passes, and a lot of this angst will go away, because it'll provide a more clear path of what the school district will probably do if it passes. If it doesn't, I think they're just considering all options. There's no decision about what Plan B is, and as far as that goes. But I don't think there's any harm in considering the possibilities of what could be done. I mean, this will be done, really, it's a matter of whether it's done now or later. I mean, what the right thing to do is, what folks really want broad community support about what happens with Mills Lawn space. I mean, that discussion will happen whether it's YSDC leading it or the school board or council or anyone else. Community support, this is just an avenue for community support to have access to a venue where questions can be asked and answered, and you have professionals come in that provide ideas about possibilities that some of us might not have. So I think it is unfortunate and it is incorrect, for folks to put two and two together. The fact that the Yellow Springs Development Corporation, is involved with the discussion, that does not turn into we're looking to find a developer to develop that property. And I think the first thing that Lisa said is we don't own that space. We don't own it. The school board does.
Let me be clear. The public owns that property. Taxpayers own every piece of government property in this village, whether it's the township or us or the school board. It belongs to the public, and we are merely caretakers.
You are
Bravo,
right.
Laura,
You're
I
right.
agree with you. So the goal is to hold respectful community-wide forums to promote understanding. The firm that was engaged, the Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative, is part of the Kent State College of Architectural and Environmental Design, and their vision is to create livable and sustainable communities, enhance the public realm, and protect natural and cultural resources. So what we're doing right now is creating a forum where all of the taxpayers and everybody has a voice. And the DC is doing the heavy lift to help organize it. And I'm really glad that we had a chance to get this conversation out there, because there is nothing about what we're doing that's trying to do some sort of subversive plan to eliminate green space. We're just trying to open up a forum for respectful community interaction. That's what we're trying to help with from the DC.
And all things are on the table, because you're going to have a community forum, so people who want to see the green space in high density housing, they'll come and talk about that.
Well, they're taxpayers too, so we need to listen, right? I mean, you can't on one hand say, but I mean, clearly there's a lot of support. We see what the support is, and I hear that. And I'm really grateful for the people who have stepped forward. But we need to have a community forum where everybody has a voice and it's accurate information, and that there's not gossip, rumor, innuendo, and triangulation.
All right,
Really
and that
damaging.
I don't really appreciate that. I'm sorry, Lisa, but I don't, because I truly, in my heart, think the 500 Yellow Springs addresses, which include township people, all likely voters, are so concerned about that green space that I truly, and I'm one of them, I'm truly now concerned that some future plan is going to be designed to put development on the green space. And if other of those voters feel like I do, we feel that our vote needs to go a certain direction to save the green space. And I don't want that. And so I propose that a majority on council and the candidates commit to preserving the green space. Commit to it in blood.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll say something first, Marianne, because I actually have, when you said in blood, Laura, that's kind of the way it feels what we need to do. Part of the reason that this is on old business is because we have discussed this, and I think this council has all expressed that we support working with the schools. We love this idea of preserving the green space. and that we also understand that there's a process. But I think I've heard that from everybody, and we've got a recording that there's that commitment. I do want to be really clear about the Yellow Springs Development Corporation. It is a designated community improvement corporation. We were not allowed to call it the YSDC because that meant risking not getting money from Greene County. And I don't know why they have an issue with calling it a community improvement corporation, but they do. And I guess the other aspect of this is I do want to remind everyone, or highlight, if you don't know, the designated means the majority of the voting board have to be representatives from elected bodies. That is where we get transparency. That's where we get the voters' input passed along through their elected officials. And that's where we also make sure that these various entities and the values that they represent with their constituents are being represented. So I think it is very important to understand that, using the term development corporation by no means explains what the entity is. And it was designed basically to coordinate these activities and make sure things have a good fit for the village. The last thing I'm going to say is I will put it in blood. I want to preserve the Mills Lawn green space, but there is a process that involves community input, and we want to make sure we hear from everyone. And I think the bottom line is, to be scared that there's going to be some big commercial development going on Mills Lawn if it's no longer a school is just absolutely not something that will happen in Yellow Springs, has ever happened. There's no way that the voters or your elected officials would let that happen. I'm 100% confident. Marianne, you wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you. I think this whole thing is very unfortunate. And I want to start with the whole green space effort. And FDR is famous for the saying, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I think that there's been a hype and fear that is totally unnecessary, echoing what Brian said. Really, the school board sell that land for a developer for housing or for whatever? I mean, how long would they would be run out of town, tarred and feathered. That will never, ever happen. And Laura, I also think that you have had a part in this, and I think it's very unfortunate. I don't know. I think partly it started with the comp plan and we didn't change the zoning. That might have been part of it. Might have been partly because the school board, in their due diligence, assessed the value of the property of Mills Lawn. They need to do that. And it was assessed for housing. None of that ever, 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 ever meant that it was going to become housing. And the fact that it has become this rallying cry, and I'm not saying that that isn't an important space. It clearly is an important public space, which of course is why all the people are coming up in support of it. But it has, my feeling is, one, it has to have a public process, not just you're for us or you're against us. It has to have a public process. And if there are people that think there should be housing on it, then they should be heard too. And I think that having this effort with this green space is holding the school board hostage when they have this work to try to have this levy go forward. And the levy itself is such a hard deal, and they've had such a hard time and going through this whole process. So I am assuming that the Development Corporation and the school, that the Development Corporation has come in to assist the school board to help look at this. And you know what Lisa said, grit, whatever that means. We have such a lack of trust. So many negative assumptions are coming in. And you'd think we were the Russia or something. It's very, very disappointing to me. And there's this been this about the anonymous donation to pay for this study. Well, those of us who've lived here long enough remember that there was an anonymous donation that enabled us to have the bike path come through the village. And that was controversial. The bike path wasn't just a foregone conclusion. And only later did that come out that Tony Bent made that donation. Well, I'm so glad that he didn't have that, or that we didn't have to deal with all this crap, which is what it seems to me about this anonymous donation. So I am very upset about this. I will end.
Okay. Laura, did you want to say something? Oh,
yeah, only that, you know, people need to realize that the Development Corporation has a statutory duty to focus on development, commercial, industrial, economic. And so people on the development board may just be in, you know, I'm familiar with those organizations and what they do, and ultimately they either facilitate land sales for that kind of development. They accumulate land, they bundle it, and then transfer it to somebody else. So there's that. What all to do. Secondly, Mary Ann, you cannot ignore the fact bride study that basically looked at the highest and best use from the study's point of view, which is residential development on the green space, and they valued it for that. So why people are surprised when citizens react to the plethora really of information that they have found in different statements people have made, that this council itself contributed to that, because you wouldn't make it a designated public park and open space in the comp plan. And then sometime in the past, a council zoned it as high density residential. And you want people to ignore this and say all is well. Well, don't be surprised when they think that all is not well. And if the levy passes and the case Keenan Road, but the question becomes, what happens to that space? And if you're not going to protect it now, and if you're not going to say that green space is off the table, let's only study the footprint of Mills Lawn for future. If you're not willing to say that, don't be surprised how people who want to preserve it are going to vote. Don't be surprised. That's all I have to say. I mean, I think it's naive to think otherwise. Thank you.
Well, I do want to make sure that we get the Yellow Springs Development Corporation, sort of documents into the packet so we can correct that inaccurate statement about what its purpose is. And we can do that next time. So Matthew Kirk, you've had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Inaccurate statement.
Hey, sorry. Just dealing with a kid issue. I just got back here. So I guess I want to say, first off, thank you to council tonight for really asserting how you feel about the future of Mills Lawn green space. I think that's been something that's kind of been lacking in the conversation. We've heard heavily from the doom and gloom crowd. They have been persistent, beating the drum over and over again, and it's kind of created a vacuum in the space. So to hear you guys assert yourselves and your commitment to the Mills Lawn, to having a conversation about the Mills Lawn green space is really important. And I really think you guys could take it a step further if you wanted to, because if the levy were to pass, no matter what, I think the village would want to play an important role in whatever the future of that property is going to be, which would mean that the village is going to have to acquire that property in one way, shape, or form, ultimately, because the village is one of the few partners that the school district could easily transfer the property to without having to go through some type of auction or some type of dispensation type of process. And so I think something like that, that's even just that simple, that doesn't promise what everything's going to be, but more just that the village is going to play an active role in assuring that control of the property is maintained and that there will be significant citizen input, is something that would be really crucial and would help aid a levy effort, and would maybe give some of those people who have been worked up and had all this anxiety created about the process some sense of assurance that more or less things are going to change, but they're not going to be dynamically transformative to the sense that the whole world's going to come crashing down as being presented right now. So I would appreciate if you could maybe go that extra mile and try to come up with some type of formalization of what the village's role is going to be in this process, because I think the village has a very significant role to play. The YSDC, maybe some kind of conduit, but at the end of the day, you're going to be the primary actors. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. I think that's. Are you on? We got to mute you. You've always got that echo thing. Thanks, Matthew. I think that was actually a very constructive comment, and I've been thinking for a while about what kind of in writing, formal, signed in blood kind of thing can happen. So yeah, we're going to think more about that, and because there is no reason for all this panic to be happening. All right, we'll take one more comment from Terry Smith, and then we're going to move into new business. Go ahead, Terry.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, so I want to echo what Matthew just said, but however, I do not agree with the comment of the doom and gloom that Matthew has done. What Laura was talking about, when the citizens see specific incidents happening, things documented, things by public people in the paper, and studies paid for, they're going to be smart and respond to it. The public is not stupid, and so we can't just assume that everything that's going to happen by village council is going to be in our favor. However, if village council, as I've been hearing tonight, for the first time, if village council is ready to say, we value this green space and we will let the public know that we value it, then that's a different story altogether. That could have assuaded all sorts of opinions months ago if people just would have come out and said these very things tonight. So perhaps you've waited a long time, perhaps you're back in the corner, I don't know, but there are many, many citizens of Yellow Springs that do not want to see that green space be used for anything other than a public park. And we need to find a way to have our public forums and other discussions to make that happen, but not to have village council and school board and YSDC remain silent on it. Okay, so those are my comments.
All right, thanks, Terry. I will reassert that I think we have not been silent, but that we have respected that the schools own the property, they need to take the lead. And I believe we went on the record in a meeting when we had a lot of folks, but I also feel like part of this is deciding who we're going to listen to in terms of who said what. But I love the idea, no matter what we've heard or not heard, of putting that down in a more formal kind of way. So I'm committed to thinking about how to do that in a way that also respects all the realities, such as we don't own that property, and but we still have the goals of our villagers in mind. So thanks for that feedback. We will certainly revisit. I imagine we'll be talking about this through November. All right, we're going to move into new business, and the first thing we have is talking about the community reinvestment area. And Josue, I guess you're going to lead that one.
Yes, thank you, Brian. And I'm going to connect this topic to what Council was talking about earlier about Section 8 legislation, non-discrimination on source of income, because I think the community reinvestment area as an economic development tool can help address some of the concerns or the topics that Council members discuss about the burden if you will, or the requirements, I should say, that are placed on voucher recipients or landlords that are accepting vouchers to make improvements to the property to meet that housing standard. The community reinvestment area could be an economic development tool that could be made available to property owners to make those improvements and forgive or abate the increase in the property tax assessment. So let me share my screen, and I'm sensitive to the time. And so I'll be as brief as possible on this, as this is only an introductory on the topic. So you should see my screen. Community Reinvestment Area, CRAs. This is a tool that's available as an economic development tool for the village, as there are other tools such as tax incremental financing, incentive districts. The CRA, the Community Reinvestment Areas, is another tool in the toolbox that could do that. The economic development tool was established in 1977 and revised in 1994 to encourage development of new structures and revitalization of existing housing stock through the use of an exemption on real property. CRAs are frequently used for development where the costs are typically higher due to lost economic value of existing structures, demolition costs, infrastructure needs, denser mixed-use nature of redevelopment projects. And that came through the Ohio, that's language from the Ohio Revised Code, and those are the relevant sections if you want to look those up. What are the benefits to property owners? What it provides real property tax exemptions for property owners who construct new buildings when agreements are executed with the local government. Property owners / developers can demonstrate to lenders predictability and a reduction in expenditures as a result of the tax exemption on new construction, makes redevelopment projects economically feasible, especially for redevelopment projects and more dense developments with higher initial costs. Banks are recognizing the property tax savings to project net operating income, thereby providing a higher leverage for project debt for projects with higher development cost. Here's a quick summary of how do you go about creating a CRA. A local housing survey is required, area in which housing facilities or structures of historical significance are located, and new housing construction and repair of existing facilities or structures are discouraged. For purpose of the housing survey is to ensure a selected geographical area that is comprised of CRA meets the statutory requirements. Inform council as the voting authority of the composition and conditions of the housing stock in the CRA, along with other demographic and statistical data that establishes context upon which the CRA is needed or will be useful. How do you go about creating a CRA? Legislation's adopted. By you adopting legislation, you're also adopting the housing survey that would identify at least 2 residential properties experiencing divestment, define the boundaries of the CRA, and defines the incentives to be provided within the boundaries of the CRA. For example, this is just an example that what's allowable, up to 100% of real property tax exemption for a period, not to exceed 15 years, depending on the type of improvement. It's new construction versus remodeling. I also want to note that a detailed CRA agreement must be executed between the village and the property owner in order for the property owner to receive the incentive. The CRA's agreements will require approval by council at a public meeting. And that's the short version. I can go into details about examples of residential and new development construction where this CRA tool can be applied. You talked about voucher recipients and landlords not being able to meet the housing department guidelines or requirements to rent to a voucher recipient. This is a tool that can help property owners make improvements to those properties to meet code compliance for the voucher program. It could also go beyond that, where it can help incentivize property owners to bring their buildings up to code within the village. And I think you all are aware that we have several properties that aren't up to code. Another example will be as we look for development activities for the CBE property. This is another tool in the toolbox that can help our village attract development.
Josue, one question I have is about timeline. So how soon are you hoping that we have, that we might have this tool to use?
I don't have a particular timeline. I want to present it to council as another tool, just as Brian, you asked that I bring PACE legislation and presentations. And when we have a project that we want to utilize this tool with, we have done the legwork to present the options to council and provide what are the options to move forward. So this is my effort to show you what's possible. If council is interested in moving forward with this, we can bring legislation as early as the next council meeting, but this is something also that we can wait for the right project. I think that it would be advantageous for us to designate the entire village as a CRA so that we are open to opportunities that might become available to CRA zones by grant opportunities at the state and the federal level. I think Mary Ann mentioned housing development dollars several meetings ago when there's a federal program to address zoning code challenges around the country, and there are grant opportunities that are being made available for infill development, and the CRA could better position us for those grant dollars for example, as that infill housing development.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
Brian, I'll piggyback on Josue's point there. We'd love to do it as soon as possible. The issue is we've got 2018 Bowen housing study, which can be easily updated with a little bit of work in-house. But what we're hamstrung by and what we've kind of been waiting on is the 2020 census data, which has not been released yet for communities under 5,000. Mm-hmm. So once we get that, we would be able to update the housing study with a lot more detailed information.
Great. So what I'm going to recommend, and thanks for keeping it brief for now, Josue. I think there's a lot to dig into here. But it would be great, Brianne, Josue, if you could share some reference documents that you think would be good for us to study up on. And then my sense is that this is something we will want to discuss further. I don't know if it'll be at the next meeting, but it would be good for council to be read up on whatever is most relevant. Laura, go ahead.
A question out there that I want to have answered is how we meet the Ohio Revised Code 3735.65B criteria. So out there, and then
you're unintelligible, Laura.
Send information.
I'm sorry, Laura.
Okay, so can I put my question in chat?
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard ORC 3035B and establishing that we've met the criteria. And then was there a second thing, Laura? Is that what you're putting in the chat? Okay. All right. Well, while we're trying to get that back, any other questions or comments before we move to the vote? All right.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Well, Laura will follow up on what questions she would like answered. Or Laura, maybe you are back. Do you want to try again?
ORC 3735.65B. I just want to know how we meet that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Josue. Next item.
Oh, all right. Brian, as part of the 2022 budget, Governor DeWine has made funding available for law enforcement around body-worn cameras. I think you're all aware of our accomplishments to become certified by the Ohio Collaborative on Community Policing. There's been a demand within our community for body-worn cameras. Before I put together this application and asked all money to have all of our officers wearing a camera 24/7, I want to bring the conversation to council and the public that this is something that we're interested in doing, and I think it merits some conversation, because I understand that there may be some concern from privacy issues in our community of what it means when an officer is on camera all the time. I think I have confidence in our law enforcement that they're trying to do the right thing every time. They do deal with sensitive issues in our community: domestic violence, child abuse, and other things that are subject to public record disclosures, or the video and audio is subject to public disclosure, and there may be some concerns around that. So want to open the door to have a discussion. What are the concerns? What are things that you want me to be aware of and sensitive to as I put this application together and we start drafting policy for body-worn cameras for police officers?
Okay.
Yeah, I have two concerns. And I'm not saying that I'm against this, but I do have some concerns. One concern is basically what you've referenced, the potential invasiveness of this. The other concern that I have is we've talked about how some of us anyway would like our law enforcement officers to wear less stuff, to look less, I'll say, militarized. Frankly, I think it would be nice if they didn't have guns, but apparently that's not a popular thing. But it seems like it's one more thing that they're wearing, and I don't know really what it looks like. But those are my two concerns. As I said, I'm not saying I don't support it. It's just, if we're looking at the pros and cons, those are two reasons that I have concerns about.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
I think generally it's a good thing. I think it's not something we can on dive and work done on a policy. Like, could we, and I don't know what best practices are. I feel like every single traffic stop, it should be on. Anyway, I know my internet's unstable here, but I just think we need to have a council committee to look at this. I think in general we should get them and figure out how to use them that fits our notions of justice here.
Okay, thank you. Kevin,
yeah, real quick, thank you. And I had other questions earlier, but I think Brianne and Josue together got me straight. So the proposal for body-worn cameras, does that by necessity, Josue, include the software and the infrastructure that you need to edit video so that it minimizes some concerns regarding privacy issues?
We do have to follow some the public disclosure rules and things as there's been concerns about minors being on video and the surrounding space of when an officer goes into a home, say for domestic violence or whatnot. Those two things aren't necessarily things that we would redact from video based on what the public disclosure law requires. And Brianne can get into the details about the legal issues around that. So there's some issues around the software. Obviously, we do need to redact some of the video content, and there is an expense there that currently we don't have the funding to support the server expense of holding all that data. I mean, every time that an officer is out, that's recording audio, and that data gets to be recorded and stored somewhere, and that takes up a lot of space. There's also software and training that goes with it. That for us, we see this grant opportunity as an opportunity to modernize that component of our police department, and we want to pursue it. And my intention is to bring the conversation to council now. And if you give me the permission authority, I will start working on the grant and bring a resolution back to council to solicit the funding. So this is an opportunity for us to get public grant money to be able to make that, buy that software, buy the licensing and the equipment, something that is a heavy lift for small communities like us to make that initial investment. So I hope I answered your question, Kevin.
Thanks, Josue.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you.
Jamie?
Hi, I think I totally agree with there needs to be something that studies this a lot more closely. And I see that you're leaning toward the cameras, which I like, but I just wanted to make clear that in my years growing up in this town, I've experienced discrimination and some questionable things on the part of police officers. There are other people of color I know in town that have had some issues with being harassed, and those officers are gone now. But the bottom line is to turn the camera on at the time of a traffic stop might not catch the harassment. The harassment a lot of times happens in a more informal situation and so I'm kind of in favor of there being 24/7 filming. And I understand that it puts some people's privacy at risk, and the redaction I think should be looked at to protect people, but I'm actually in favor of cameras.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Jessica.
Hi, Jessica Thomas, Yellow Springs News. My question is for Josue. Given the fact that we have just passed this resolution to start looking at broadband, how would the creation of that utility and having public broadband affect the storage issue that you addressed with storing the data of these cameras? So how would that bandwidth help or not affect at all the storage issues for data from the cameras?
Mm-hmm. The way that our current data retrieval from vehicles work is that data gets retrieved when the officer comes back to the station to turn in their equipment. So that data gets downloaded, the audio from the body microphone and the audio on the dash camcorder are synchronized so that the data is packaged and stored together back when it's here. I think the municipal broadband, what it allows us to do is to have our vehicles connected with other broadband access points beyond just the little AT&T and Verizon hotspots that they carry in the vehicle. So they're two separate things. I envision a world that at some point we'll be in the space like in the movies where, from some computer behind the police department, you can see every officer's video camera and audio, and you can have two-way communication. I think a broadband network can provide the infrastructure to do that. I don't think that we are modernized to have that in place, nor do we have the people that are controlling officers out in the field in that way. So I think they're just two separate issues for the time being. From what I can envision, our data retrieval taking place, happening in the same way that it's the same process that is now. As an officer clocks into their duty, onto their shift, they tune all their devices, they synchronize audio and video, and they synchronize their body camera to the vehicle and to their shift. And when they're done with their shift, that data will be retrieved from all their body-worn devices, their microphone, their camera, and their dashboard. And those things are synchronized on the back end on the server. So I think that those remain two separate things. However, what we do have in place is we do have GPS tracking on the vehicles, and I think that the broadband piece can play a role in feeding back data on where the officers are located. So when an officer leaves the vehicle, the GPS currently stays with that vehicle. I think we now have another data point as an officer walks away from the vehicle that you can have data points on where they're located, and that data could probably be fed back through the broadband network where there's a Wi-Fi access point.
All right. Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Josue. All right. So it sounds like there is interest in further exploration of this. Does any council member not feel that way? Okay. So I think that's the answer to that question, Josue.
Okay.
I don't know if we're going to be ready for a resolution at the next meeting or anything, but is this grant opportunity urgent or?
Yes, it's October 8th. So yeah, it's a very narrow window there. If we bring it up on our next meeting is October 4th. So I have a few days to, the submission would be that same week.
Okay, Judy, let's do a quick check to see if people want to move forward with a grant submission, if they're prepared to say yes to that now.
Brian, before you do that, I've got one quick thing that I would want council members to take into account before they gauge their interest. There is a House bill pending right now that would require every law enforcement agency in Ohio to have body-worn cameras established by July 1st of 2023. And this is Andre's law. And what it would also do is if an officer turns off their body-worn camera or dashboard camera or tampers with it, it would be inferred that the missing recording would have demonstrated misconduct by that officer. So that's something you should take into consideration when you're gauging your interest in whether you want to move forward with seeking a grant, is that the state may end up mandating it at some point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, and I also agree with the idea, by the way, that having a committee dig deeper into this that involves citizens and village team members would be good. Okay, so Judy, let's just go around and see if people are saying yes to the grant application.
Okay. McQueen.
No.
Okay. Stokes.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Krieger. Okay, thanks. House.
And I'm also going to say yes.
Thank you.
And I'll mention as a side note, while I never want to give a grant back, we will have time to process it and make sure that we actually want to use that grant. So, okay. International Indigenous Peoples Day, Mary Ann.
I noticed in the arts and culture notes that Lisa submitted, there was discussion. I'm wondering whether, Lisa, you and I might talk about this offline. I mentioned Kathy Roma and Ohio Indigenous People Day, so I wasn't sure what, if anything, was being planned.
We're not hearing you, Lisa.
Yeah, at one point we started having some things planned, and then we found out there was this larger movement that folks were involved in, and we thought, well, there's no Indigenous people on the committee. We thought it was inappropriate for us to drive something, but instead to reach out to Indigenous people in our community. We earmarked some money, and we weren't really getting a lot of ask back, but right now, we want to support the larger Ohio Indigenous Peoples Day. And then also John Fleming and Kathy Roma are a subcommittee, and they're working with Shane Creeping Bear to frame something to put in the paper in support of National Peoples Indigenous Day. And that's where we are. Yeah.
All right. And I definitely think it's great to figure out something that we can do notably to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, since that is something that we've recognized for many years. Okay, so you guys are going to talk offline, Marianne? Is that the deal?
Yeah, and I could also contact Kathy and John and Don Rickenbach.
Oh, yeah, Dawn is absolutely in the heart of the larger movement. And so when we approached her to do something for Yellow Springs, she already was part of this larger initiative. So that kind of changed our plans. There's been multiple conversations with her. So, if you want to lift that up, I would be glad to work with you and also connect with John and Kathy, who are taking the lead on this.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right. So it is 9:32. My suggestion is going to be, whose number is that? Okay. My recommendation is going to be that if there are any questions for Josue related to the manager's report, follow up with Josue offline. Future agenda items, please forward those to Judy before Friday, since that's probably when we'll have agenda planning. And last thing, I want to give a quick shout out. Some of you guys might have noticed the new community access logo that's on the Zoom window. So I want to thank Lacey Fox for doing a great job with that, and excited to have her on board. So unless there is anything that can't wait, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week and stay safe. Wear your mask. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.